Hi there and welcome to our next video on cell specialization. We've seen an introduction to cells and how we look at them. In this video we are going to be looking at the different types of cells and how they are adapted to their function. So let's start off with the meaning of cell specialization. It's important to learn this definition as it could come up in an exam. Each type of cell has a particular role and function. They have adaptations which allow the cell to carry out their function. This makes the cell specialized. So all this means is there are many different types of cells in our body and they all have a different function. They are specialized in a different way. So when some of these adaptations go wrong, this can often cause disease. So let's start off with sperm cells and infertility. So sperm cells are the male reproductive cells. Some of the adaptations they include are a long tail for mobility. So this long tail over here. They're full of mitochondria for energy to move. So throughout the cell, there's packed full of mitochondria to allow the sperm cell to move, and it has enzymes in its head so it can move to the egg cell over here, and it carries half the DNA. A sperm cell has 23 chromosomes while others have 46. So a sperm cell is a haploid because it only contains 23 chromosomes. And a sperm cell fuses with an egg cell to produce 46 chromosomes, which are 23 pairs. So moving on to the egg cell. So egg cells are the female reproductive cells. So some of the adaptations they have include a lot of nutrients for the growth of the embryo. The outer membrane is protected, and this is because the sperm cell has to fuse with it, and the egg cell fertilizes when it has been fertilized by the sperm cell. So the egg cell is a haploid cell as well because it only contains 23 chromosomes, and they produce 46, which is 23 pairs. Next is the red blood cells. So the function of red blood cells is to carry oxygen around the body. So without red blood cells, we won't be living because there won't be any cells to carry oxygen around the body. People with low red blood cells have a disease called anemia, and this has trouble breathing. So some of the adaptations they include is that they have a lot of hemoglobin, and this is used to transport the oxygen. They have a large surface area because they need to store as much oxygen as they can, and they have no nucleus, so again there's more space to carry the oxygen. Nerve cells. So the function of the nerve cell is to carry electrical impulses through the nervous system. So it's important that you learn that as well. It could come up in exams. The electrical impulses go from the dendrite to the axon. So they have adaptations as well, and they have long, lots of branches known as dendrites, which allow the nerve cells to communicate with many other cells at once. So nerve cells are probably the biggest cells in our body. They can go up to a meter long. So something else which is included is the myelin sheath, and this is made of fat and it covers the axon. So it's like the outer layer of the nerve cell, and this insulates it, keeps it warm, so the impulses can travel further. So they want to get the impulses as further as they can without any issue. So another adaptation is that they're very long. They can get up to 1 meter. They have a thin axon, so electrical impulses can travel further. And when the nerve cell adaptations go wrong, it can often cause disease called multiple sclerosis. So this is a common disease with people with weak nervous systems, and this is normally caused because there's some problem with the electrical impulses traveling from one part of the body to another. So this happens when the myelin sheath is damaged and broken down by the immune system. So some of these symptoms can include fatigueness, vision problems, and muscle weakness. So nerve cells can cause a really big disease, so it's important you look after them. So muscle cells, when they contract, the skeleton moves, and this gives the organism mobility. So some of the adaptations are proteins which are arranged in the cell so they can slide over during contraction. So muscle cells also have a lot of mitochondria, because when they're contracting, they need energy to slide over each other. So cells which include mitochondria fairly need a lot of energy to actually come into play. So energy is the important thing with muscle cells. So when some of the adaptations go wrong, it can cause disease called muscular dystrophy. So this means that there's a lack in active protein, which is in the gene mutation for the muscle cells. And with this disease, muscle cells can break down, and this causes weakness, and loss of function. So muscle cells can lose their function, and it's a very big disease that can cause harm to the body, because your muscles start to function not right. It just starts to break down, and the person would be in a lot of pain. So the ciliated epithelial cells, so these cells are in line with the trachea, and this is to move the mucus and dust out of the lungs. So some of the adaptations that they have small cilia to move the mucus out of the lungs. A note to keep in mind is that all these small cilia cells work in a group called a unison. So that's an important point to remember. A disease that this can cause when the adaptations go wrong is cystic fibrosis. So this disease produces mucus, and this infects the cells in the lung. So this can cause a lot of problems. So it can cause trouble breathing, and so like your breathing would start to slow down, and you could cough when you're breathing. Just multiple problems when you're breathing. So the ciliated cells will not be able to move, and so the dust and bacteria remains trapped in the lungs. This can cause lung infections and give you a short breath. So if the dust and mucus are trapped in the lungs, that carries on and builds in the lungs, and that's why the lung infections are very common with this disease. And if you have a lung infection, that means you are very prone to getting a short breath as well. So root hair cells. So moving on to plants now. These cells are found in the base of the plant, and they play an important role in the absorption of water and nutrients from the soil. So you wonder, you've poured water to the plant, where does that water go? Well, the soil absorbs it, and then the root hair cells in the roots absorb the water through osmosis, and they take that water up to the plant. So some of the adaptations include having a large surface area, a short path for diffusion by the membrane, and a vital vacuole to store nutrients. So the vacuole over here stores nutrients, and this is one of the most important things, adaptations you need to know for your exams. And they have a short path for diffusion because they need to be doing this as fast as possible to supply all the nutrients to the plant. As you can see over here, a thin cell membrane to allow the nutrients in. Next are xylem cells, and I think this is the last cells. So this transports water throughout the plant. So phloem cells do the opposite. They transport nutrients, minerals throughout the plants. The xylem cell transports water through the plant through a process called transpiration, but we'll be having a look at this in another video. So some of the adaptations that are included are that they have a thick cell wall, which is made of lignin, and this provides mechanical support to the plant. So they need to be strong, and they do this by having a strong cell wall which is made of lignin. Another adaptation is that it doesn't contain any organelles, so there is more space to store water. So they need as much room to store water and transport it, so they don't have any organelles. it's important that you remember all these adaptations, as they're very key questions in exams. So in our next video, we're going to be having a look at some exam questions to do with cell specialization. So that is it for this video. Thanks for watching. I hope you liked it, and one last thing, please subscribe and hit the like button.